Housewife broke all boundaries with the bull. Now she doesn't want to talk with me because depression. Not sure if this is acceptable housewife behavior. My name is Ryan, 35 years old, a software engineer who has spent the last decade working 10-hour shifts behind a computer. My wife, Sarah, is 33, a freelance interior designer with a sense of independence that drew me to her from the beginning. We've been married for 6 years. Then there's Blake, the bull, 38, a personal trainer with a body sculpted like a Greek god and the type of arrogance that seeps through every word he speaks. At first, I tried to accept the situation. Sarah had always been open about her desires, and I thought I could handle the whole housewife thing, her stepping out to explore with other men while I watched from the sidelines, so to speak. It sounded edgy, exciting, and it kept things spicy. But this was not what I signed up for. It all began innocently enough, or so I convinced myself. We had rules, strict ones. Sarah and I agreed from day one emotional boundaries were not to be crossed. This was supposed to be purely physical. I wasn't supposed to feel like I was losing her to someone else. But slowly, I noticed the changes. The messages that had started out as flirty updates from her adventures began to come less often. She spent more time texting Blake, laughing at her phone in ways I hadn't seen in years. The last time she even bothered to text me something flirty was months ago. One night, as I sat on the couch scrolling through Netflix, I glanced over at her. She was sitting across from me, completely absorbed in her phone. My curiosity got the best of me. I leaned over slightly to catch a glimpse, pretending to search for the remote. My heart froze. She wasn't just texting Blake, she was sending him long, emotional messages. No more short and dirty flings. No more of the agreed upon, no feelings involved. I could feel my hands trembling as I tried to process what I had just seen. I didn't confront her right then. I needed more proof. So, I did what any guy in my position might do, I snooped. When she was in the shower, I opened her laptop and found the chats. The explicit details of what they had done together didn't shock me. That's what I signed up for, but the way she talked about him did. There were dozens of messages about how he'd understood her in ways I never did, how he'd made her feel alive in a way I hadn't since our honeymoon. Then, I found it. The bombshell. One text from Blake: maybe we should just run away together. Leave all this behind. And Sarah's reply: maybe. That was it. I could feel my chest tighten, my heart racing. My wife, the woman I trusted, was on the verge of leaving me for the bull. I hadn't felt this kind of pain before. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. This guy, Blake, was living out every man's worst nightmare, and he didn't even try to hide it. And Sarah? She had taken what was supposed to be a harmless thrill and turned it into something deeper, more dangerous. I waited for her to come out of the bathroom. I could hear the sound of water shutting off and her moving around the bedroom, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. My thoughts raced, filled with a mix of rage, confusion, and a strange numbness. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead, I took a deep breath and decided to keep it together for now. If she was ready to leave, I needed to think this through. When she walked into the living room, wrapped in a towel, I casually asked, "You texting Blake again?" I tried to keep my voice light, like it didn't bother me, even though it tore me apart inside. She gave me that dismissive smile, one that used to be cute but now felt patronizing. "Just keeping up with him. You know how it is." "Oh, I know," I said, standing up and walking towards her. "I know exactly how it is, Sarah." She stopped in her tracks, her expression shifting. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took out my phone and opened the screenshots I had taken. I handed it to her, and for the first time in months, I saw panic in her eyes. She quickly read through them, her face turning pale as realization dawned on her. "Ryan, it's not what you think," she started, but the words felt hollow, like she was reaching for an excuse she knew wouldn't hold up. I laughed, not a genuine laugh, but that bitter, angry kind that you give when you're so hurt you don't know what else to do. "Really? Because it looks like you've crossed every line we ever set." The argument that followed was explosive. Sarah tried to twist it, saying she didn't know how it got this far, that it was all just in the moment and a mistake. But I wasn't buying it. She admitted, in a roundabout way, that Blake had become more than just a fling. She admitted that feelings were involved, that she had started to fantasize about a future with him. And that, to me, was unforgivable. I felt the anger rising in my chest. "So, what's the plan then? You're just going to leave me, go run off with Blake?" I shouted, unable to contain the fury anymore. Sarah looked down at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't know. I didn't think this would happen." "You didn't think?" I was pacing now, trying to keep myself from punching a wall. You didn't think that crossing every damn boundary we set would blow up in your face? For the first time, I saw tears well up in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered, barely audible, but it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to look at her the same way again. As I stared at her, standing there with tears rolling down her face, I couldn't help but feel like she was no longer the woman I married. She was someone else now, someone capable of betraying everything we had built together. This was just the beginning. I wasn't going to let her or Blake walk away unscathed. If she wanted to cross the line, I was going to make sure she paid the price for it. This wasn't just a marriage at risk now, this was war. After that night, everything changed. Sarah barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was only when necessary. Our once vibrant home felt like a morgue, cold and lifeless. She kept telling me she was depressed, that she couldn't process what had happened. But I wasn't buying it. She wasn't the one blindsided by the emotional affair, I was. Yet, here she was, playing the victim while I simmered in my anger. I spent a few sleepless nights replaying everything over in my head, trying to figure out how it had gotten to this point. Where did I go wrong? How did we go from an open, honest relationship to this twisted mess? Blake's name haunted me. The idea of Sarah in his arms, laughing with him, confiding in him, it ate me alive. It wasn't just the physical aspect anymore, it was deeper. She had broken the rules, yes, but she had shattered something far more fragile: trust. A week after the confrontation, I decided I needed to know more. I wasn't content to let things unravel without fully understanding the depth of what was going on. So, I did something I had never imagined doing. I hired a private investigator. It felt extreme, but I needed clarity. Was Sarah still seeing Blake behind my back? Were they making plans to run away together? I couldn't shake the paranoia. I needed proof of what was happening when I wasn't around. I gave the investigator all the details. I had Sarah's schedule, Blake's gym location, and even some of the texts I had uncovered. I didn't tell Sarah, of course. She was already walking on eggshells around me, and I preferred it that way. I needed her to think I was cooling off, that maybe we could salvage things. It gave me time to plot my next move. The investigator worked fast. Within 2 days, he had tracked Blake down. Apparently, Blake wasn't exactly the clean-cut personal trainer he pretended to be. He had a past, one that was well hidden from social media and the world Sarah lived in. According to the report, Blake had been involved in multiple shady business ventures, some that bordered on illegal. He had scammed clients at his gym, manipulated women for money, and, more recently, had been investigated for tax evasion. He wasn't the godlike figure Sarah thought he was a conman, using his charm and good looks to prey on people who trusted him. But that wasn't the real twist. That wasn't what shocked me to my core. No, the real bombshell came when the investigator showed me a set of photos from the last 3 days. In every single one, Sarah was meeting Blake. At first, it looked innocent enough, just 2 people grabbing coffee or sitting in a park. But in one particular set of photos, they were sitting together in what looked like a clinic. The investigator had taken a few shots of them walking inside and later, Sarah exiting alone, looking pale and sickly. I didn't understand at first. A clinic? What could that mean? My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe Sarah was sick, maybe she was dealing with some health issue she hadn't told me about. But then the investigator gave me more information. That particular clinic specialized in fertility treatments. I froze. Fertility treatments? That didn't make sense. Sarah and I had talked about kids, but we never got serious about it. We were always too busy with our careers, too focused on living our lives, traveling, and enjoying each other. But now, staring at these pictures of my wife and her lover at a fertility clinic, everything started to fall into place. I decided to confront her that night. I couldn't wait any longer. The house was eerily quiet as I watched her prepare dinner in the kitchen, her face drawn and distant. I hadn't mentioned Blake's name since our blow-up, but now I had to. The silence was unbearable. "How long were you planning to keep this from me?" I asked, walking into the kitchen, my voice calm but laced with tension. She looked up, confused. "Keep what from you?" I took out the photos and laid them on the counter. Her eyes widened in shock as she recognized them. "I hired someone to follow you," I said bluntly. "I know about the clinic. I know about Blake." Sarah's face drained of color. She stepped back from the counter, her hands trembling. "Ryan, it's not what you think," she whispered, tears already filling her eyes. "Then tell me," I said, my voice rising. "Tell me what the hell is going on." She collapsed into a chair, her hands covering her face. "I didn't know how to tell you," she sobbed. "I didn't want to hurt you more than I already have." "Sarah," I said through gritted teeth, "what the hell is going on?" She wiped her eyes, her voice barely audible. I'm pregnant, Ryan. The room seemed to spin around me. Pregnant? I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I felt a tidal wave of emotions hit me all at once: rage, confusion, betrayal. My heart pounded so loudly in my chest I could barely think straight. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain control. Is it mine? Sarah's eyes filled with guilt, and she looked away. That was all the answer I needed. It's Blake's, isn't it? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. She nodded slowly, unable to meet my gaze. It wasn't supposed to happen, Ryan. I swear, I didn't plan for this. It was a mistake. A mistake? A mistake? My entire world was collapsing around me, and she had the nerve to call it a mistake. The rules we set, the trust we built, all of it was gone, shattered by her recklessness. And now, to top it all off, she was pregnant with another man's child, Blake's child. I felt my blood boil. This wasn't just betrayal, this was something far worse. She had destroyed everything we had for a man who couldn't even keep his own life together. And now she was pregnant with his child. I stood there, staring at her, my fists clenched at my sides. What's your plan then? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you going to raise this child with him? Leave me for good? Sarah shook her head, sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know what to do, Ryan. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I love you, but I love him too. I finished her sentence for her, the bitterness dripping from my words. Is that it? You want both of us? She didn't respond, but the silence was enough of an answer. She was torn, caught between two worlds, one where she still loved me, and one where she was infatuated with Blake. But her indecision was too much. I wasn't going to stand by and let her toy with my life any longer. I had heard enough. It was time to plan my revenge. The days that followed were like living in a fog. Sarah moved around the house like a ghost, a shell of the woman I once loved, and I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. Every time I looked at her, all I saw was betrayal, and worse, Blake. That man had infiltrated every corner of my life, and now he was going to be a permanent fixture in it if I didn't act fast. But revenge? Revenge was my only comfort. The anger that simmered beneath the surface kept me going, fueling my every thought. I had never considered myself the vengeful type, but this was different. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or a broken heart. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and making sure that Sarah and Blake never forgot what they'd done. The rage became a clear, driving force, like a compass pointing me toward the justice I needed. First, I knew I had to be smart. Impulsive revenge was sloppy, and that's not how I wanted this to go down. No, I needed to be strategic, precise, and leave no room for error. Blake thought he had gotten away with everything, seducing my wife, getting her pregnant, all while keeping up his charade of being some perfect gym god. He had played his cards well, but it was time to flip the deck. I spent hours each night devising my plan. Every small detail had to be accounted for because I wanted this to be a masterpiece of retribution. If Blake wanted to play games with my wife's body and heart, then I was going to play games with his livelihood, his reputation, and his freedom. I remembered the investigator's report vividly. Blake wasn't just a cheat, he was a crook. His past, littered with scams and shady deals, gave me everything I needed. People like Blake, they operate in the shadows, relying on secrecy. If the right information got out, his whole world would crumble. And that's exactly what I intended to do, destroy his perfect little world one piece at a time. Blake's entire reputation was built on his career as a personal trainer. He had crafted this image of being the go-to guy for anyone looking to get into shape, especially wealthy clients. He used charm, manipulation, and a lot of lies to create this fake empire around him, but I knew it was all built on sand. One wrong move, and it would all come crashing down. I dug deeper into the investigator's files and found exactly what I needed. Blake had been operating without proper licenses for years. Not only that, but he had scammed multiple clients out of money, promising personalized training programs that never materialized. There were complaints, lawsuits waiting to happen, and unpaid taxes. He had been careful, but not careful enough. So I made a few phone calls. The first was to the Health and Fitness Board in the state, alerting them to Blake's fraudulent business practices. A few anonymous tips about his lack of licensing and improper conduct, and I knew they'd be launching an investigation soon enough. Next, I contacted some of Blake's past clients. It wasn't hard to find disgruntled people who felt cheated by his fake promises. A few nudges in the right direction, and suddenly those quiet complaints turned into loud demands for justice. I made sure these people knew their legal options and encouraged them to take action. Blake's world was about to get very noisy, and he wouldn't even know where the attacks were coming from. But I wasn't done yet. Blake loved to flaunt his gym as his pride and joy, so I hit him where it would hurt the most, his reputation. I created a series of fake Yelp and Google reviews for his gym, each one more damning than the last. I paid 4 fake accounts to write about how Blake made inappropriate advances toward female clients, how he'd swindled them out of money, and how unsafe his equipment was. It didn't take long for the ratings to plummet, and the clients to start canceling. Step 2: his personal life. It wasn't just Blake's professional life that I wanted to ruin, it was his personal life too. Men like Blake thrived on being adored, on having women fawn over them. But what if all of that came crashing down? What if Sarah wasn't the only one Blake was using? I had a suspicion, and I intended to find out. I dug into his social media, looked through his followers, comments, and every public interaction he had. Blake was sloppy online, always posting pictures of himself at the gym, with clients, and at fancy dinners. It didn't take long for me to find a pattern: a few women who seemed a little too friendly, who commented on everything he posted, who always seemed to be at the same places he was. I reached out to a few of them, posing as someone interested in their relationship with Blake. It didn't take long before one of them cracked. Her name was Madison, and she thought she was Blake's girlfriend. Not just some fling or casual hookup, she believed Blake was in love with her. I felt a sick satisfaction as she poured out her heart over the phone, telling me how they had been seeing each other for months, how Blake had promised to leave his crazy ex, how they were going to move in together. She had no idea that Blake was using her just like he was using Sarah. I saved every text, every voicemail, and every email Madison sent me. This was gold, and I was going to use it to blow up Blake's entire life. Once I had enough, I packaged everything into a neat little bundle: screenshots of his conversations with Madison, pictures of them together, and the audio recordings I had from our calls. I waited for the perfect moment to drop this bomb, knowing that Blake's entire world was going to implode. But Madison wasn't the only one. I found another woman, named Jessica, who had been involved with Blake on and off. She wasn't as emotionally invested as Madison, but she had stories. Stories about how Blake treated women like disposable objects, how he bragged about using them for money and sex, and how he laughed at Sarah behind her back. I couldn't believe the treasure trove of ammunition I had gathered, and all without Sarah knowing. Blake was a master manipulator, but he had underestimated how much I was willing to fight back. Then, there was the clinic. I couldn't get the fertility treatments out of my mind. Sarah was carrying Blake's child, but I still didn't fully understand the significance of that visit. What had they been doing there? Was Sarah planning to have the baby, or was there something else going on? I needed answers. I did some research and found out the clinic specialized in both fertility treatments and abortions. My heart raced. Had Sarah gone there to terminate the pregnancy? Was she going to erase everything like it never happened? I wasn't against the idea of her getting rid of the baby. I didn't want to raise Blake's child. But the fact that she had made that decision without telling me, without even considering my feelings, made my blood boil. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about us, our marriage, our future. I decided to confront her about it, but not yet. Not until everything was in place. I bided my time, waiting for the perfect moment to pull the trigger on all of this. Every time Sarah tried to talk to me, I brushed her off, telling her I needed space. The truth was, I was just waiting for the right time to strike. I had to make sure that when I did, there was no escape for Blake or Sarah. Finally, the moment arrived. Blake was hosting an event at his gym, some kind of fitness expo to attract new clients. Sarah had been quiet for days, but I knew she was going to the event. It was the perfect opportunity for my plan to unfold. I sent everything I had gathered to Sarah in an email: the conversations with Madison and Jessica, the complaints from clients, the Yelp reviews, the legal action that was brewing against Blake. I told her this was the man she had chosen, the man she had betrayed me for. I wanted her to see just how low she had sunk. And then, I went to the expo. The look on Blake's face when he saw me walk through the doors was priceless. He had no idea what was coming. I played it cool, pretending to be just another spectator, while the storm I had created swirled around him. One by one, people started to leave the gym. Clients, sponsors, and even his staff began getting texts, calls, and emails about Blake's shady past, about the lawsuits and complaints. You could feel the tension in the air as the news spread like wildfire. Blake's perfect world was falling apart, and he didn't even know I was behind it. The tension in the air was palpable. As I walked into Blake's gym, it felt like stepping onto a battlefield. People were milling about, some blissfully unaware, others staring at their phones with furrowed brows. The event was in full swing. Bright banners advertising Blake's elite training services hung overhead, while booths showcased fitness supplements, fancy equipment, and overpriced gym apparel. It was everything Blake had built his career on, his entire empire assembled in this single room, and I was about to tear it all down. I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and anticipation. I spotted Blake near the front, standing next to Sarah. She had dressed up for the event, wearing a fitted black dress that hugged her still flat stomach, her hair styled perfectly as if she wasn't carrying another man's child. For a moment, I felt the familiar pang of pain. This was the woman I had once loved, the woman who had stood by my side. But now, she was just part of my revenge. Blake was doing his usual routine, flashing his million-dollar smile and shaking hands with potential clients, his massive arms on display like trophies. He had no idea what was about to hit him. I took a deep breath and positioned myself near the back of the crowd, close enough to watch but far enough that I wouldn't immediately be noticed. I wanted to savor every moment of his downfall. As the expo continued, I could see the first signs of trouble brewing. People were whispering, showing each other their phones, frowning as they scrolled through the damning reviews and accusations I had planted. Blake was still blissfully ignorant, laughing and chatting with his adoring fans, but I could see the ripple effect starting to take hold. A woman in a bright pink tracksuit, likely one of his clients, approached him with her phone in hand. She looked furious. "Blake, what the hell is this?" she demanded, shoving her phone in his face. Blake's smile faltered as he looked at the screen. I could only imagine what he was seeing, one of the fake reviews I'd written, accusing him of making inappropriate advances on female clients. His brows furrowed, and he quickly shook his head, putting on his best charming face. Hey, that's just some troll online," he said, trying to laugh it off. "You can't believe everything you read." But the woman wasn't buying it. "I've seen 3 different posts about you doing this, Blake. This isn't a troll, it's a pattern. And if it's true, I'm done with this gym." Blake's face tightened, but before he could respond, another man stepped forward, his arms crossed over his chest. "What about the tax evasion? People are saying you've been scamming clients and dodging taxes for years. Care to explain that?" Blake's eyes widened. He looked around, realizing that more and more people were staring at him, phones in hand, whispering. His confident demeanor was cracking, the cracks widening by the second. I could almost taste the panic radiating off him, and it was glorious. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. "This is all just a big misunderstanding. I'm being targeted by—" "You're damn right you're being targeted," I muttered under my breath, a smirk tugging at my lips. But Blake wasn't done digging his own grave. Before he could finish his weak attempt at damage control, Sarah stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "Blake, maybe we should take this offline," she said softly, her voice trying to calm him down. She had no idea that she was about to get pulled into the storm. That was my cue. I stepped forward, slowly making my way through the crowd. People began to notice me, and as I approached, their eyes widened in recognition. I was no longer just a random attendee, I was the husband. The husband who had been cheated on, lied to, and betrayed, and I was about to reveal the final piece of my plan. "Blake," I called out, my voice carrying through the room like a cold wind. His head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing as he saw me for the first time. Sarah froze, her face draining of color when she saw me standing there. I could feel the tension ratchet up a notch, the crowd sensing that something big was about to go down. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I ignored her, focusing entirely on Blake. "You really thought you'd get away with it, didn't you?" I said, my voice steady, but laced with venom. "You thought you could take everything from me, my wife, my life, and just walk away?" Blake's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He knew better than to try and bullshit me now. The crowd around us had grown silent, everyone watching with wide eyes, waiting to see what would happen next. "Tell them, Blake," I said, taking a step closer. "Tell them about the affair. Tell them how you seduced my wife, how you got her pregnant, how you convinced her to leave me for you. Tell them everything." Sarah's hand flew to her stomach as gasps echoed around us. Blake's eyes flicked between me and the crowd, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. He was trapped, and he knew it. I could see the panic in his eyes, the fear of losing everything he had worked for. "You're lying," Blake said, his voice shaking. "You're trying to ruin me because you can't handle the truth." Sarah made her choice, she chose me. "This isn't about me, it's about you being a pathetic loser who can't accept reality." His words were like gasoline on a fire, but I kept my cool. I had all the power now, and I wasn't going to let him weasel out of this. "Oh, I'm very much in touch with reality," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "In fact, let's hear some of your reality, shall we?" I played the audio recording of my conversation with Madison, the woman Blake had been seeing behind Sarah's back. Her voice filled the room, describing how Blake had promised to leave Sarah, how they were planning to move in together, how he had been stringing Sarah along the whole time. The crowd erupted into murmurs of shock, and Sarah's face turned ashen. "Blake," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Blake's face went from red to pale in an instant. "Sarah, baby, I can explain." But before he could finish, another woman in the crowd stepped forward. I recognized her immediately. It was Jessica, the other woman Blake had been seeing. She had a look of pure fury on her face. "You bastard," Jessica shouted, storming toward him. "You told me you weren't seeing anyone else. You said I was the only one." Blake's eyes widened as he realized his world was collapsing faster than he could keep up with. He tried to back away, but the crowd had closed in on him, trapping him in the middle of his own expo. Sarah turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Ryan, I didn't know. I didn't know he was seeing other women." I met her eyes, and for the first time, I saw the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She had thrown away our marriage for a man who had never been faithful to her, who had used her just like he had used so many others. The look of betrayal on her face was almost satisfying, but not quite enough to erase the pain she had caused me. "I told you, Sarah," I said, my voice cold. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." The crowd around us was buzzing, people whispering, pointing, and filming the entire scene. Blake was trying to fend off Jessica, who was now yelling at him, calling him a liar and a cheat. His gym, his business, his reputation, it was all crumbling in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of months of anger and betrayal lift off my shoulders. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment Blake lost everything, just like he had made me lose everything. Sarah reached for me, desperation in her eyes. "Ryan, please. I didn't know. I never meant to hurt you." I stepped back, shaking my head. "It's too late, Sarah. You made your bed. Now lie in it." And with that, I turned and walked out of the gym, leaving the chaos behind me. As I stepped outside, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. Revenge wasn't supposed to heal you, they said. But in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes, revenge is exactly what you need to feel whole again. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of chaos. After leaving Blake's gym that day, I felt an odd sense of relief. The revenge had played out perfectly, better than I could have imagined. But as much as I savored the victory, there was a lingering emptiness, like standing on a battlefield after all the enemies were gone. I had won, sure, but what now? What comes after revenge? The fallout for Blake and Sarah was immediate and brutal. Word of the explosive confrontation spread like wildfire. Social media was flooded with videos from the event, capturing every humiliating moment: Blake getting called out for cheating, his clients turning against him, and his business partners distancing themselves. Gym members were canceling their memberships en masse, and reviews tanked his online presence overnight. Blake's empire was crumbling. I heard through the grapevine that Blake tried to do damage control, releasing a statement about the untrue rumors and vowing to clear his name. But it was too little, too late. His sponsors pulled out, his gym attendance plummeted, and the fitness expos stopped inviting him. His reputation, built over years of carefully curated lies, was destroyed in a matter of days. The gym he'd poured his heart into closed within a month. People in the fitness community wanted nothing to do with him after the revelations. Women spoke up, more accusations came forward, and Blake found himself embroiled in multiple legal battles, not just for the inappropriate advances on clients but also for the tax evasion I had leaked. That one was the final nail in the coffin. But what truly gave me satisfaction wasn't just watching Blake's career implode. It was Sarah. She had moved out of our home the day after the confrontation, taking nothing but a few clothes and some personal items. The house we'd built together, the life we'd once shared, was mine again. For the first time in months, I could walk through the hallways without feeling that stabbing pain of betrayal. I didn't block her, though. I wanted her to see everything, to feel every bit of the fallout, and she did. The text started pouring in soon after she left. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk? I didn't know about Blake's other women. I swear, I made a mistake. Please, don't shut me out. I need you." It was almost laughable. The woman who had torn my life apart now realized the man she had thrown me away for was nothing more than a fraud, and she wanted to come back to me. I let her stew in it for a while. No responses, no acknowledgement, just silence. Her desperation escalated with each passing day. The call started, voicemails filled with her sobs, her apologies. I deleted every single one. But the real breaking point came about a week later. I was working from home, feeling more focused and in control than I had in months, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Sarah standing there, her face pale and gaunt, dark circles under her eyes, her clothes disheveled like she hadn't slept in days. She looked broken. "Ryan," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "About what?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and she clutched her stomach, the reminder of Blake's child growing inside her. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't know who Blake really was. I didn't know he was seeing other women. I thought he loved me. I stared at her, unmoved. "And what exactly do you expect me to say, Sarah? That I'm sorry for you? That I'll forgive you and we'll just move past everything like nothing happened?" She wiped at her tears, shaking her head. "No, I know it's too late for that. I don't know what to do anymore. Blake's gone, his gym's gone, everything is gone. I'm all alone, and I can't do this by myself." Her hand instinctively went to her belly again. "I can't raise this baby alone." I felt a twinge of pity, but only for a second. It was quickly replaced by the cold, hard truth. "That's not my problem, Sarah. You made your choices. You didn't just cheat on me, you destroyed our marriage, our future, for him. Now you have to live with the consequences." "But we had something so good, Ryan," she cried, her voice rising in desperation. "We were happy, don't you remember? We can get that back. Please, I'll do anything to make this right. I need you. I can't live like this anymore." Her words were hollow, and deep down, I knew she wasn't truly sorry. She wasn't coming back to me because she regretted what she did. She was coming back because Blake had failed her, because her life had fallen apart, and I was the safety net she thought she could cling to. She wanted me to be her savior. But I wasn't going to play that role anymore. I took a step back, opening the door wider as if inviting her in, but instead, I pointed at the packed boxes in the hallway behind me. "Those are your things," I said coldly. "Take them and leave. We have nothing left to talk about." Her eyes widened in shock, looking at the boxes, then back at me. You're serious?" "Dead serious," I replied, my voice unwavering. "You think I'm just going to forget everything? You think you can come crawling back, and I'll pick up the pieces for you? That's not happening, Sarah. You don't get to destroy my life and then expect me to fix yours." She stood there, frozen, as the reality of what I was saying sank in. The tears started flowing freely now, and she let out a shaky sob. "Ryan, please. I need you. I love you. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can be a family." But I had heard enough. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me, guilt me into taking her back. She had made her choice, and now it was time for her to live with the consequences. I shook my head. "No, Sarah, I don't love you anymore. You killed that the day you slept with Blake." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't falter. I walked past her, grabbing the first box and shoving it into her arms. "Now take your things and leave." She stood there for a long moment, as if hoping I'd change my mind, that I'd break down and give her the forgiveness she was begging for. But when she saw that I wasn't going to, her shoulders slumped, and she reluctantly took the box. One by one, she loaded her things into her car, her eyes red and swollen, her face streaked with tears. When she was done, she stood by the car door, looking at me one last time. "Ryan, if you ever change your mind." "I won't," I said flatly. "Goodbye, Sarah." With that, she got into her car and drove away, disappearing down the street. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and finality. It was over, truly over. In the days that followed, I expected to feel emptiness, but instead, I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. I focused on myself, my work, and the things that made me happy. The house felt like mine again, not a haunted reminder of a failed marriage. As for Sarah, I didn't hear from her again after that day. Blake had completely disappeared, leaving her to fend for herself with a child on the way. Maybe she found someone else to lean on, or maybe she finally learned that actions have consequences. I didn't care enough to find out. In the end, I realized that revenge wasn't about hurting them, it was about reclaiming my life. And I had done that. I had won.